So, we're finally here. It's time to do the long-awaited review for the Titan X Pascal edition, or what I am going to call the Titan XP from now on, which seems to be the more common name that it is currently being known as, because Nvidia decided to call it the same as the old model, which is a bit confusing. So in this video, we are going to talk about what makes this card so special. We're going to have a look at some benchmarks. We're going to just do a quick overview of why this is such a groundbreaking graphics card, especially for the VR generation. And just to give you guys a heads up, we're going to split this video into two sections. So this first video is just going to focus more on the card itself and just general benchmarks like 3D Mark, Heaven, and just how it's performing with the water cooling. Now, the second part of this video will be purely dedicated to VR, of course. But I wanted to cater to two separate audiences because there are some people who just want to see the raw performance of the card, and other people want to see how it does in VR applications. So we're going to cover both those bases off across two videos. So let's just kick this off and just get started straight with the graphics card itself. So the Titan X is based on Nvidia's new Pascal GPU architecture. It has 3584 CUDA cores. It's clocked at 1.5 gigahertz. That's the base clock before it boosts up and does all sorts of amazing other things. And it is loaded with 12 gigabytes of RAM, which is an insane amount of memory. And believe it or not, this card isn't actually catered towards gamers. It's more designed for deep learning applications and other sort of high processing requirements that don't necessarily line up with gaming. Just so happens, though, that this card is excellent at gaming, just like the previous version, and it basically wipes the floor with anything that is on the market. This is the fastest graphics card you can buy. It is not the most expensive. There is one card more expensive than this, and that is the P6000 Quattro card from Nvidia. But it is not faster than this card in gaming applications. So keep that in mind. This card is, $1,200 US. It is insanely expensive, and it's not the full story of what you need to spend on this card either. But yes, it is the ultimate, like they say. There is no competitor for it. ATI are just lost in the background somewhere, while Nvidia just roll along with the fastest cards in the world. Now, as I said before, it's not the complete story with this card, that $1,200 US price tag. Yes, you can just run it like that with its stock air cooler, and, you'll have a very good experience from it, but it is not everything this card is capable of doing. Unfortunately, the stock air cooler is severely lacking when it comes to allowing this card to perform at its absolute best. The second you put this card in and you fire up your first game, your first benchmark, you find it just smashing into the thermal limit, which is around 84 degrees, and at that point, the card starts throttling back its core, starts slowing itself down to try and keep the temperatures under control, and that's when your performance starts to vary. It starts to turn into a bit of a yo-yo, going backwards and forwards, trying to maintain as much performance as it can without overheating. Now, as you see in this first graph, pretty much across the board, 84 degrees, 86 degrees, everything that I've tested in it. And this is with the fan just running on its standard profile. I'm not ramping it up, but even on a standard profile, it started to get pretty loud. And therein comes in our next point, and why I went down the road of water cooling everything in this new system. It wasn't just about just going overboard with it. It was about getting the most out of this card. Now, as you saw in that start video, it was a lot of work. It was about 4 days to build this system from start to finish and get mod everything. But the gains were absolutely worth it. Like, we're talking, as you can see, like a 48 degree temperature reduction, 52 degree temperature reduction. So basically, it's an insane difference. Like, you can't even compare it. And the most amazing thing is when those temperatures come down to that point, the card is able to run at full speed all the time, never slowing down. And in VR, that is quite important because if you don't have consistent performance out of the card constantly, you start to, get some weird things happening where you get a good frame rate and then it drops out a little bit and comes back. Now, as you can see in this next section, pretty significant advantages in water cooling the card. At our best, we saw a 8.8% increase in performance, and that's just from putting a new cooler on the card. That's without touching a single other setting on the card. But of course, when you water cool, you also have the opportunity to overclock. And oh my god, this card is an insane overclocker. Now, as you can see in this next part, we come to the total performance gains that you can get out of this card. So with the EK water block, with some overclocking, we got 230 megahertz out of the core with a nice, solid, stable overclock. Not too aggressive, not conservative. It was just perfect. It was humming along for ages. It did not care running at this speed. So the core was running at 2050 megahertz up from its base boost, which is around 1800 megahertz. And we gained roughly 22% in performance at best. And that is just an insane gain to get from, a card that was already insanely fast, which sort of leads on to what a lot of people say, why don't you just get two 980 Ti's? Why don't you just get three ATI cards? Why don't you just get two Titan X's? When it comes to VR, running multiple cards is just not a solution. And it's the same for a lot of just normal games as well. Running two cards or more introduces so many problems, and you just can't get around this sort of stuff. So that is why it is important to get the most out of a single card that you can. And when it comes to the Titan, it is as good as it gets. Which is where we come to the final part of this video, where we compare it to my 980 Ti that it replaced. 980 Ti was water cooled as well, obviously. They were both overclocked, so this is a level playing field. And the 980 Ti, while an older card, is very similar to the 1070, which is sort of a mid-range card now, and what most people will probably look at these days for VR who are more budget conscious. And in short, it's on a different planet. I mean, 80% increase in Time Spy, which is a DirectX 12 title, looking at between 70 and 80% across the rest of the titles. It's just insane, and it's quite interesting as well, because I can't recall another piece of computer hardware in recent times that has taken such a jump in one generation. And it is really sad, to be honest, that, ATI are just lagging so far behind. By the time they roll out their new GPU, Nvidia will probably be ready to release their next one. They're basically a whole generation ahead at this point, and everything they seem to be trying to do is more of a pipe dream than anything. And, that sort of comes to the conclusion in this video, is this card worth $1,200? Plus, if you want a water court, you're looking at another $400 US if you want to do that. And the only conclusion I can come to is that it is worth the money if you can afford it. While, yes, it is insanely expensive, it has no competition. And as far as I'm concerned, if Nvidia are willing to go out and develop this sort of hardware, they should be able to charge whatever they think it's worth, especially when they've got no competition, so they don't even have a reason to really make it. And I'm really grateful that they do, because it's companies like this that are keeping VR going and giving us the platform we need for titles to get better and better. When you got graphics cards like the RX 480 that are slow and can barely run current VR titles, all they are going to do is hold back VR progress from ever getting off the ground. And so kudos to Nvidia for making this insanely fast card, and I have to say that I'm just over the moon with it. And so stay tuned for my next video. I hope you guys found this moderately useful, but like I said, I wanted to split the two videos off, and The VR section is going to be a lot more exciting. We're going to be going back, looking at other titles that we've already done. We're going to be seeing what the Titan X can do versus the 980 Ti in real-world VR applications, where it's going to be quite a bit different, I think. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you in the next video.